This boy, since he was a child, he could see a monster that no one could see. This monster does not appear often, but when it does, people die, like a sudden car accident. For many years, the boy never told anyone about the monster. Instead, he chose to keep it a secret. He worked as an ordinary cook in a restaurant. But this day, a creepy yellow-haired Sam walked into the store, followed by a monster. Then several other monsters came into the store. All the monsters had the same goal, and they all gathered around Sam. Thomas was shocked, because the more monsters that appear means more people will die. Sam must be something else. Thomas followed him all the way. Sam came to a fancy car and looked at it, and bought 2 buckets of ice cream to take home. Seems pretty normal. Soon Sam came to a mysterious cabin. After he left, Thomas snuck in. There was an ashtray in the house. There were 3 different brands of cigarettes in it. That means Sam has other accomplices. Suddenly Thomas heard a strange sound. It was coming from the room. Thomas went up and found that the door handle was actually frosted. He opened the door to see. Everything in the room was actually frozen to ice. Thomas also found a strange hole, glowing blue. He reached up to it, but the hole quickly expanded, soon spread throughout the room. Thomas rushed out the door, hiding in the door to observe. As a result, millions of monsters crawled out of the inner door. They were pouring out like crazy. So many monsters. It means that half of the people in this town will die. Thomas guessed that Sam was trying to create a massacre. To find out who he was, he quietly returned to the room. By now the room had been restored to peace. Thomas found a few pictures. The people on them were tied up and brutalized. This just proves that Sam is a murderer. Thomas opened his calendar. He found that the page for the 15th was missing, and the 15th was tomorrow. Thomas deduces that tomorrow is the day of Sam's massacre. He rushes to the town sheriff and tells him the news. What he didn't expect was, not only did the sheriff not think Thomas was talking nonsense, he also sent his men over to investigate Sam. It turns out that before this, Thomas often told the sheriff. The sheriff had often told him, asking him to help stop it, because every time Thomas told the truth. So the sheriff trusted, but in the absence of any evidence of defects, the sheriff did not allow Thomas to arrest people at will. Soon after, Thomas and his girlfriend went to the roof of the church to discuss how to find other evidence of Sam's crime. Halfway through the conversation, Thomas saw a man coming from downstairs. It was Sam, and he looked very vicious. Thomas remembered that he was a murderer. Quickly take his girlfriend to hide in the room. When it was quiet outside, Thomas quietly opened the front door, peeked out to see. The church was empty. No one was there. Suddenly, the door on his girlfriend's side slammed. Thomas grabbed his girlfriend and ran. The 2 of them got on the motorcycle. Fortunately, Sam didn't chase after them anymore. Thomas called the sheriff. He told him to go to the church and arrest the man. But by the time the sheriff got there with his men, the church was just vandalized debris. There was no one there. What was even stranger was that there were no fingerprints of Sam. Thomas guessed. The cunning Sam deliberately erased the crime information. So far, nothing has been found. And the time has come to the early morning of the 15th. Soon, the town's first murder took place. In the middle of the night, a beautiful woman ran out anxiously. There were 2 vicious dogs chasing her. The dogs were extremely vicious, pounced on the beauty and tore wildly. In a short time, even her clothes were chewed up. She was also dead. Thomas rushed to the scene. He recognized that the dog was owned by a Sam. Thomas told the police the news, but the police unfortunately also indiscriminately suspect Thomas.
Exactly where were you between the hours of 8 and 10?
Faced with questions, Thomas did not explain too much. Disappointed to return home, only to turn on the light, he found a gun on the floor. The lights in the toilet had been turned on. Thomas went into the bathroom. There was a dead man lying in the bathtub. Turned over to see, it was the yellow-haired Sam. Thomas froze. This man was dead in his house. It seems that someone is trying to set him up. Thomas had to take out a sheet. He lifted Sam's body and put it on the sheet. Inadvertently, Thomas saw the wound on Sam's chest. His hands were very stiff. That means he's been dead for a long time. Suddenly Thomas remembered that at the church, the sheriff said he hadn't found Sam's fingerprints. His girlfriend also said she hadn't actually seen Sam. Most likely, it means the Sam who came to the door at that time was his dead ghost. Only the psychic Thomas could see him. The only thing that doesn't make sense is that Sam is dead. Why would the evil spirit want to haunt him? Thomas couldn't figure it out. He decided to get rid of the body first. He sneaks Sam's body into his car. Then he hid it in a secret warehouse. Thomas decided to go to the sheriff for help. But when he arrived at the sheriff's house, there were a bunch of police cars outside. It turns out that just now, the sheriff's doorbell rang. As soon as he opened the door, the sheriff was shot several times by a mysterious person. Thomas rushed to the hospital, where a man was guarding him. The man said the sheriff was still alive. He was being resuscitated. This is a disaster. Without the sheriff's help, it was very difficult for Thomas to move. He went back to Sam's house, looked at the computer, trying to find information about Sam's accomplice. Unfortunately, he couldn't find any. Rummaged through the refrigerator, except for a few teeth. No useful clues at all. When Thomas was at a loss, Sam reappeared as an evil spirit. At this time, Thomas finally understood why Sam always haunted him. It was probably because Thomas found out Sam's massacre plan. In order to prevent the plan from being leaked, Sam was killed by his own accomplice. The evil spirit in front of him was enraged. Under his control, the cabinet began to shake. The refrigerator shook violently. Thomas suddenly felt bad. Trying to run, he crashed into the TV. The evil spirit controlled the refrigerator and pinned Thomas against the wall. Thomas got up and continued to run. Stove also until he rushed to him. He jumped up to dodge the attack. Breathe a sigh of relief. The gas next to him has begun to leak. Thomas jumps out of the window, just in time to avoid the massive explosion inside the house. Thomas gets in his car and escapes this hellhole. Then he came to a rotting corpse. He opened it up and saw that it was the body of Sam, the evil spirit from earlier. He put the wounds on his chest together. He saw 3 English words, P.O.D. Thomas had seen this word before. A police officer named David also had it on his hand. It seems that he is Sam's accomplice. Thomas found David's police car, followed the trail to the door of a surveillance room. A masked man came out of the room. Thomas knocked him out. Flipped the mask and see. This man is not David. It was another officer. Thomas took the gun he was carrying. There were only 4 bullets in it. Thomas went to the supermarket to look for the other robber David. And that's when he saw the corner of the roof of the supermarket. The monster began to emerge in a frenzy. It soon spread throughout the supermarket. A massacre was coming. Suddenly there was a scream from the crowd. The crowd scattered and fled, but the doors were all locked somehow. They couldn't get away. Thomas ran in the opposite direction of the crowd, and sure enough, he found a masked assailant. He was holding a machine gun. He was shooting indiscriminately at innocent people. And not far from there was Thomas's girlfriend. Thomas rushed over to her. The first shot misses. The second shot still misses. The third shot was fired. Hit the gangster's shoulder. The last shot was not yet fired. Countless monsters swarmed around Thomas, frantic to stop him from moving forward. Monsters like to kill each other. Thomas, on the other hand, tried his best at the last minute. The assailant was successfully killed. Thomas headed for his girlfriend's location. Is she dead? Luckily, she's not dead and she's standing up. Thomas was happy. But suddenly, he actually saw a monster appear again. Thomas plucked away the mask of the thug. The individual is not David. That means David is still planning the massacre. Thomas rushed to the basement. He saw a van with the trunk open. Tons of explosives inside. Suddenly, a bullet is fired. David spots Thomas. Thomas rushed to close the trunk and forced the car. He drove the car to the main road. Who knows, David actually did not give up. Hold on to the car door for dear life. He climbed into the car and shot him. Thomas rushed to dodge, but was still grazed by a bullet to the head. There were only 17 seconds left before the explosion. Thomas pulled the door open. He jumped out of the car. The truck crashes into the roadside fence. The bomb detonates. The disaster was finally over, and Thomas passed out. When he woke up again, his girlfriend was by his side because Thomas saved the town. He also became a worthy hero, but Thomas didn't care about that. Now he just wants to be with his girlfriend. Live a happy little life with his girlfriend. They ate junk food together and danced together, watching movies together, staying home every day, living a life that was just for them. Until the day the sheriff came to their door, and he said something strange.
You've been here long enough. We think it's time to stop.
Sweetheart, the coroner finally released her poor body.
Thomas's expression became stony. He turned to look at his girlfriend behind him. He saw her body was covered in blood. It turned out that his girlfriend had actually died that day. All these days, She was just a ghost. The truth is too painful to accept. That's why these days Thomas played dumb and lied to himself. But now it was time to say goodbye. Thomas watched his girlfriend slowly walk out the window. She turned into a butterfly. The butterfly would soon fly away. But the love of his girlfriend will always live in Thomas's heart.